All right, so recording started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So welcome to day 4 of the Inspired Coding Club game dev class. Today we're going to be working on making the player and finishing our game. Well, almost finishing our game. We'll be making some final tweaks on day 5. But let's go. So to start, before we get into Godot, I'm going to be going over a node that we'll be using. It's going to be representing our player node. So a kinematic body node is a physics node. We countered the area 2D on day 2. So they kind of it's kind of like part of the same like kind of class of nodes. So if area 2Ds and we have kinematic bodies, we'll also be covering a new type of physics body or physics node. But yeah, so a kinematic body node is a physics node that is controlled entirely by code. So this is useful for us because we're going to use it to make our player scene because we want to control the movement of our player like with code. We don't want it to just kind of move around like a ball, right? Because then it's just gonna like bounce up, down. That's not really, you don't have much control over that. So other uses of kinematic bodies besides like players could be like a moving platform, right? We want the platform to go to a certain spot, then go back, or a door that just like a sliding door, or even enemies that you have in your game. That may be they need like they're like patrolling an area and these enemies need to move from one spot to another, right? All right. So let's set up, well, actually, before we do that, we got to open up our project. So I already have it open here, but we're going to open up Godot and we're going to open up the day 3 project right here. Instead of making a new project, we're going to open up day 3 one. All right. And so Unity, yes, I have used that before and I moved to Godot about like 2 years ago. I originally started with Unity. Okay, so let's set up our player scene. So we got to make a new scene. Start off by clicking the plus up here. Right next to our main scene, we're gonna have to click the plus. Add a new scene. Click the white plus here now. And we're gonna search up kinematic body. There we go. Kinematic body 2D. We want the 2D one because it's a 2D game. This one over here is for 3D. We want the 2D one. So get that. I'm gonna rename this quickly. You can right click and then click rename. And you can name it player. And then I'm gonna be giving this a collision shape, right? We gotta have some sort of area defined. That's where it's gonna collide. And then we're gonna add a sprite as well. All right, so once we have that now, let's go to our sprite and let's give it a texture. Let's give it the sprites.png texture. And who remembers what we gotta do now? Anyone remember, because you did it for the coin. What do we gotta change? Because right now it's showing both the coin and our player. Okay, we gotta change the texture, but what about, yeah, texture region. Oh, Hadar just joined up. Yeah, we gotta go to the texture region. So click on that sprite, go to the bottom. I am going to draw this. So you're gonna click on this button, and it's important that you have your sprite selected. All right. So click on that texture region. You can zoom in and move around. You want to you want to zoom close enough so you can see the sprites pretty good. And then you are going to make sure you have pixel snap enabled in your snap mode. And then we're going to drag this around our sprite, just like that. And then go back to your sprite, go to region. As Hudson said, yeah, we gotta enable it. If you don't, even if you don't even want to draw it here, optionally you could have gone to rect right here and then just copied in these numbers 16, 0, 13, 13. But once you have that, you have your little player sprite. Oh, whoops. Okay. And then what's our next step? Who can tell me? Do again. Oh, okay. You want me to do that again? I'll do it again. So click on your sprite, click on texture region here. Yours will probably be very far zoomed out and in the corner. So zoom in, then you can pan the camera with middle click. And then you are going to drag this box around your player sprite. And then you want to make sure the region here is checked. So click on the region category and then click on enabled. All right, and then as Hudson said, we're gonna now add a collision shape or a collision rectangle. So click on that collision shape 2D node. Click on the shape. We're gonna get a rectangle shape 2D. And we'll just fit this around our player. I'm gonna click on these three dots and then click on pixel snap so that this fits the texture of our sprite. Oh, wait. Never mind. You can't use pixel snap here. Just fit it as best you can. Right. It's not too noticeable if it's a little off. There we go. Oh, you could use snap? Huh, that's weird. Well, if it works for you, it works. But I'm not too worried. I don't think that little extra little bit of collision is gonna ruin the game, so I'll keep mine like that. All right, so once you have that, let's Control S, save our scene. It's a good name. Let's save. And then let's add a script to our player. So click on the kinematic body or click on the player node and click on the script icon with the green plus, attaching a node, create new scripts, create. All right, and then let's delete the default code and we're gonna write some code now. So I'm gonna start writing and I'll explain what I'm doing. So right now I just create a new variable, right? We're creating an export variable. It's gonna be a float, a decimal number, and that's our move speed. It's how fast our player is gonna go across the screen. And then, yes, I will get it to the code document. Do not worry. So this is on the code document. I'll send the link right now. There it is. That is the code we have so far. All right. Let's explain this really quick. So we create a variable, right? That's how fast our player is gonna move. And then we have this func physics process. If you guys remember, we used to have in one of our previous projects, we used just the process like this. And while that is all good, and like that runs continuously and that can be used to move our player, this isn't what we really want because we're working with physics, we're just gonna use physics process because that means all our code inside physics process is gonna run what is it called? Run at the same time as the other physics that the Godot engine is calculating. So whenever we're dealing with physics or something that's moving in our game, we're going to want to use physics process, not process. All right. So let's now go and add some like movement. So to start, we're going to add some input mappings. So let's go to projects, the top left, projects, project settings. All right, and then we're going to go to input map. In general, we're going to go to input map. And we are going to add a couple actions here. We're going to add up, down, left, and right. All right, so once you have those, let's now add let's add keys, right? You gotta add key bindings to these. So for up, I'm gonna add W. For down, I'll add S. For left, I'll add A. And for right, I'll do D. If you want, you can do the arrow keys for this, right? Up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, right arrow. In fact, I'll do both just to show that you can do both. But you can do one or the other, right? All right. So it should look something like this, right? We have up, down, left, and right. And I'm going to close this down now. So inside this physics process, what we're going to do is we are going to, first off, delete pass. I'll put all this code in the code document after I write it. So we're going to create a new variable called velocity. And this is going to be set to vector2.0. So this variable that we created is inside the physics process function. So this can't be accessed from another function unless we pass it in somewhere. So this is only in this function. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to check if the left action key is pressed. We want to increase this velocity by our move speed. Or actually, no, negative move speed, sorry. And then to speed this process up, I'm going to copy paste this 4 times because this code is pretty similar. We'll make this one right. I'll talk about velocity. We'll make this positive. We'll make this Y. We'll make this one up. All right. And then last but not least, we are going to write this code. Actually, we don't need this. Okay. So I'm going to put this code in the document now, and I'll talk about what it does. So first off, we're creating a variable called velocity, and this velocity is stored in a coordinate, like 2 numbers, like an x coordinate or an x component, and then a y coordinate or component. And velocity, we've talked about position, right? The position of an object, like where it is on our screen in space. Velocity velocity on the other hand is like how fast our object's moving plus like the direction it's moving. So speed, like the speed of our object, is how fast it's moving, but that does not include the direction. Right now, our velocity, because it's a vector 2, right? It represents how fast our player is moving and the direction it's moving. So whenever we call, so we're gonna change that velocity depending on the direction we're holding. So if we're holding left, we're gonna decrease it by our move speed. If we're holding right, we're gonna increase it by our move speed. So if we're holding both left and right, it'll basically, these two lines will cancel each other out, and so we won't move at all. Same thing for up and down, right? Just remember that up is actually negative, and I made a mistake. Sorry. I'm gonna change that on the code document. Yeah, up is negative y, and down is positive. So now we're setting this velocity based off of the direction we're moving. So left and right will control the x velocity, right? And up and down will control the y velocity. And Hudson asked, what does vector 2 mean? So vector 2 is essentially, I'll write a comment here. This is a, vector 2 is a data type or a variable type of a variable that stores two decimal numbers that represents really any data you want. It doesn't need to be just the position, or even it doesn't even need to be a velocity. It could be like the size of an object. It could be two completely unrelated values if you really want to do that. But yeah, that's what a vector 2 is. It stores two number values. And vector 2.0 just creates a vector 2 that has 0 and 0 as two values. And then we are changing that based on the input direction. Makes sense so far? All right. And lastly, this line of code is what kind of brings it all together. If we were to just do this code is completely useless and it does nothing for us. But this is what ties it all together. So this move and slide function is specific to kinematic bodies, a kinematic body 2D node. And it's going to take a velocity. And it can take other arguments, but these aren't relevant to our game, so we're not going to talk about them. So we have move and slide, and it's going to take in the velocity that you want to move the player by. And so essentially we're going to move the player by the velocity that changes based off our input. A long way to say that basically we're just moving the character with input with the arrow keys or WASD. So let's save the scripts. Let's go to our player and let's make sure we change the move speed to something that's not 0. I'm gonna make mine 100. Let's just click the clapboard so we can test it out. And you should see that you can move your player with the arrow keys. Pretty cool. Right. So all right, so if you guys might remember that on day 1 of class, we talked about this this delta up here. You can't move yours. Okay. I'm gonna put the code back into the code document and you can try copy pasting it. Yeah. And you gotta make sure that your move speed is not 0. So make sure that's something other than 0. Preferably like 100. You could try 100. Just try 100 for now. And if that doesn't work, then maybe you could check your input maps. Make sure that you actually have keys assigned to each of these actions, right? So up, I have W and up. For down, I have S, down arrow. For left, you don't see the player. Okay. So the player looks like this. You'll need to move the player down whenever you start the game. Let me show you. You might make this mistake. it's important to click this icon instead of this. We don't want to click that. And we want to make sure that we are on the player scene, because we're testing just the player scene right now. We're not testing the main scene. We'll add the player in there later. We're testing just the player. Okay. So double check the script, double check your input map, double check your move speed, and make sure you are running the player scene. And then whenever you play you test it out, your player is going to be in the top left corner. And so you can just move them out of that corner by using the arrow keys or the WASD. Okay. So I'll go back to what I was saying now. So inside of this physics process, or even the process function, we have this this variable or argument delta. And who remembers what delta stores? What is delta? What does that mean? What does that variable do? Your FPS, kind of, yeah. Anyone else? Okay, well, delta is essentially like the like your FPS. It's like 1 over FPS. Okay. You can if you want to think about it mathematically, that's what it is. That's what delta is equal to. But simply it's just the time since the last time physics process was called. FPS, and yeah, delta represents the last time since this physics process function was called, and that's in seconds. So if it's going to be a very small number, probably like 0.0166, something like that, depending on how fast your game is running. And we use this delta value to make our game. Remember on the first lecture, we use this delta value to make the game frame independent, right? That way, if the game is running on a potato computer that runs at 10 FPS, the player is still moving the same amount of the same speed, right? Compared to someone who's running on 120 FPS or higher, right? We don't need to do that here because this move and slide function that we're calling already incorporates delta, right? We just got to give it a velocity, and then it'll move it whatever amounts it needs to based on the current frame rate. You don't need to pass in delta. You don't need to do velocity times delta. In fact, that'll make it dependent on your frame rate, and it'll mess it all up. So you actually want to make sure you don't do that. And it even says this in the documentation. Documentation is a useful tool. I'll be talking about the last day. So yeah, don't use delta when you're using move and slide. Right. Yeah, it's essentially delta's built into this function already. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So now that the player is wait. Okay, so the player is pretty much complete. If you test, you'll notice that the wait, sorry. So we have our player scene here now. Let's drop this into main so that it can interact with our coins and it can be part of the game. So let's go to our main scene, click on the main scene, and then go to your file system and look for the player.tscn file. That's our player scene. I'm going to drag that into main. Just like that. I'm going to move the player to the center of the screen somewhere. Doesn't need to be perfectly centered. Let's save this and let's play our game. So if you guys remember, we have an output. It tells us press space to start the game. So if you press space, it'll like randomize the coins and then it'll start the game. But you'll see right now our player is doing nothing. and this is not so much a game, right? We can collect the coins with our mouse, right? But that's what we want. We're gonna change that. So let's do that. Let's open up the coin scene really quick. Let's open up the coin scene. Not quite Hudson. We're gonna do something slightly different. So, well, depending on your meaning, that could be right. Yeah. So, open up the coin scene, and we are gonna click on our coin. Then, oh, you can't find your coin scene. So your coin scene is bottom left in your file system. Look for coin.tscn. Then double click that to open it. You can also right click and then click on open scene. And then that'll open up your scene. So yeah. And then you can see your coin right here. Pretty cool. And then what you're gonna want to do is go to node on the right here. You can see my cursor. And then we're gonna make sure we're on signals. Want to make sure you're on signals, not groups, signals. And then we are gonna want to right click on this on coin mouse entered. Right click on that and click disconnect. Because we want to make sure that our coin isn't doing anything when the mouse is entered anymore. We were doing that just to test our code, but now we don't want that. So we're gonna right click disconnect. And now we're gonna connect the body entered, this signal right here. We're gonna use that one now. So right click that, click connect, and you'll connect it to itself. So I'll do that again. You disconnected the mouse entered signal, and you're gonna get the body entered signal, and you're gonna connect that. Boom. And then you're gonna take all the code inside on coin mouse entered. Copy that, and then paste that here. Oh, oops. Just like that. And then you'll delete the on coin mouse entered. I'll put this code in the code document now. It really hasn't changed much, but it's the signal that's changed, right? So now whenever this coin collides with the player, it's gonna delete itself. So let's test this. Let's press space to start the game. And you'll see that whenever our player touches a coin, the coins disappear. And you'll see that our messages are being printed out in the output. Press space to start the game. You win, right? Cool. Is that not working for you, Hudson? You can't collect the coins. Okay. So there's a couple areas where you could go wrong. First, make sure you can't collect them with your mouse. You want to make sure that the mouse no longer works. So make sure that the mouse isn't collecting them. Don't show player, only a coin. Okay. So the issue you're doing now, the problem is that we're running the coin scene. You're testing only the coin scene. You're pressing this one. Because we want to test this main scene right here, you're going to click on this button, not that one. Because this button is the scene that we assigned, that we told Godot is the main scene. So you'll see that down here in the file system, this main scene is highlighted in blue. That means that it's the main scene. It doesn't matter that it's actually just named main. What matters is that it's highlighted in blue. And so whenever we click this button, it's going to run whatever scene is highlighted in blue. And we want to be running the main scene. So click space, it'll generate the coins, collect the coins, collect more coins. Any more issues we are having? All right. I'm going to move on to the next step. So you'll see that right now with our game, our player can venture on outside of the visible space, right? I can move my player and I can make them go outside of the game where we don't want. Right? That's kind of stupid. That's like you can break the game pretty much like that, right? You don't want the player going outside of the window. So let's fix that. Let's go to our main scene. And let's click on 2D. And then I'll help you guys with your issues after we add walls. So let's do that. So we have our player in the center of the screen. We're gonna add a new node. So make sure the main node is selected. Click on the white plus. And we're gonna add a static body 2D node. Static body 2D. Add that in. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to give it a collision shape. So a static body 2D node, as the name suggests, is a static physics body. It essentially can be a number of things, but we're going to be using them to create walls that our player can't exit, right? We don't want the player leaving the screen. So we're gonna get this collision shape 2D. We're gonna give it a new shape, a rectangle shape. And then you'll see these little lines. I'm gonna highlight them in red. These, my tracing skills aren't the best. Okay. But yeah, we have these lines and that represents the edges of the screen. And what you'll want to do, I'm gonna nail pixel snap or yeah, is you're gonna fit these this collision shape to be one of the walls. So we have that. So once we have one side of the wall, we're gonna get this collision shape 2D node. You can press Control D to duplicate or right click and then click duplicate. And then you're gonna move this to the other side. You can line it up. Okay, and then duplicate again. And now we're gonna make the top and the bottom boundaries. Oh, what's that? That's not right. Why is it doing that? So the reason this is happening, you see that when I'm moving one of these collision shape, it's moving all the other ones. That's because we got to this rectangle shape is the same rectangle shape that these two other nodes are using. So whenever we duplicate this collision shape, that same rectangle shape is being used like among them, right? It's not separate. So they're all going to use that same boundary. So the way we fix this, quite simply, you right click on the rectangle shape right here. Okay. So you're going to right click right there and then click make unique. make unique. Okay. And then when you change this, you'll see that it only changes that one shape. That's what you want. All right, cool. And we'll take this other one, duplicate it, and put it at the bottom of the screen. And it's not too important, right? It's not important that this extends a little bit farther to the right or to the left, or if it's too thick or not. All that matters is that it covers the boundaries. And it's going to prevent our player from going off screen. All right, so let's test this out. Let's try to go out of the screen, and you'll see that we can't now because we added these static body, these walls to our game. In fact, I'm gonna rename this static body 2D to wall or walls. That way I know what they are in the future. All right. Is anyone still having issues with their coins not working? So you can spawn coins with space, and you can collect them with the player. Newton's okay, Newton. Okay. So there's a couple places you can check. First off, you want to make sure your signals are correct. So click on your coin, go to the coin scene, go to node, then go to signals. And you want to make sure that you have this signal, not this one. Do you have that? Yeah, great knowledge. You have that? Okay. And so let's check in our script then, open up the script. And you want to make sure that you have that little green arrow. And you want to make sure this says body entered. You want to help Newton? That'd be great. Continue with the lesson. But yeah, just make sure that body entered is there and we have this. And then if that's not working, then I'll help you after class. Okay. So right now our game works perfectly fine, right? You can spawn in coins. You can collect them, and we have a little message that says you win. But there's no challenge, right? So as Hudson is always guessing what I'm gonna say, he's right. We have no timer. There's no challenge. We got to add a timer that's gonna make the game have some sort of challenge. So we're gonna start by adding a timer node. Actually, we're gonna add 2 timer nodes, right? So click on your main, click on main up here. Click on the main node, and then we're gonna add a child node. This is just gonna be a timer. We're gonna name this coin timer. That's gonna track our coin, how much time we have left, how much time the player has left. We're gonna add another timer, and we're gonna call this start timer. This is gonna be a very simple countdown for our game to start. And it's gonna be useful to make sure that our player has some time to like get ready, plan out a path for them to get all the coins. And then for both of these timers, we are going to go over to their properties, and we're gonna go to one shot, and we're gonna enable that. And go to coin timer as well and enable one shot there. And what one shot does is it makes sure that the timers will not restart whenever they reach 0. Because we want them to run once, and then we don't want them running over and over again. We want to start and stop it manually. So there we go. Now that we have our timers, let's go to our main scene. And for this code is going to be a lot. So this code I created a reference document and I will be sharing this in the chat. It is different from the code document that we have. It is right there. And so whatever you see highlighted in yellow is what we are adding. And it's important to note the exact line or whatever, like let's say we have this first these variables that we're creating. We want to make sure that it's between var coin count and func ready, because you want to make sure the order and the code that are, yeah, you can just copy paste the whole thing if you want. But I'll be referring to that as well when I explain it. But I will be adding this code now, and then we'll go over what it does. All right. Yeah, it is easier if you just select the entire script and copy that. That way you don't run into any issues with like formatting. There are, let's see. I don't think there are 89 lines. I think it's a little bit less. Actually, no, there are 89 lines. Yes, exactly. If you copy it directly from here, there are 89 lines. Depending on how many like blank spaces you have, it'll be different. So nothing to be too worried about. Okay. So we just added a bunch of code and it's gonna be a big explanation. So let's start. So first off, we have these variables at the top that we created. We create a variable called game started, and by default that's equal to false. This is gonna track when our game is like being played, like right when it started. So by default, it's not gonna be started. And then we have a variable called an export variable that's called coin time. This is gonna track how much time each coin gives us. So we can adjust this to make the game harder or easier. And we also have a variable called start time. That's gonna tell the game how much time the player should start with whenever they spawn in or whenever the game starts. So we can adjust that to make it harder or easier as well. And then so that was these 4 lines. And then we have this right here. So we used to just check for we wanted to check if input is action pressed, start. So we're checking if the space key is pressed. Now we also want to check if the game hasn't already been started. So we're checking if the player is pressing the space key, and so if the player is pressing the space key and the game hasn't started, then we can start the game. And then whenever this start game function is called, we want to set game started equal to true so that it can't be called again, right? So whenever we start the game is started. And then down here, we have a bunch of code. Let's go step by step. So player.pause equals true. So We'll need to add some code for this to actually work. But this variable is going to be a variable in the player script that's going to control the movement of the player, or it's essentially going to stop the movement of the player if this is equal to true. And then we are also setting the position of the player to the center of the screen. The way we do that is we get we have this function, get viewport rect. Get viewport rect, essentially what that does is it gets the screen size as a vector2. So it has the width and the height of the screen. And then we're getting, or actually it gets as a rectangle. So it has 4 values. It'd be a position, X position, Y position, width, and a height. So we're getting the size of that rectangle. And then we're getting the width of that. And we're cutting it in half. We're dividing by 2 because we want to get the center. And we're doing the very same thing in the Y direction so that it's centered exactly in the middle of the screen. And then here we're starting the start timer. So we'll set how long we want to wait before the game starts. So whenever the space key is pressed, we'll wait like 1 second before the player is able to move. So I'm gonna have this be 1 second right now. So start timer is 1 second. All right, and then after we start this start timer, we're telling the player, we're printing, get ready, right? Get ready, the game's about to start. And then we're gonna yield what this yield does. So yield, it's like a special type of function that's gonna wait for this object, this node, this timer. And we're gonna wait for whatever object this is. We're gonna wait for it to emit this signal. In this case, we're waiting for this timer to time out. So we're waiting for the timer to finish, essentially. And then after that, we can do all this code. So after the start timer is finished, we're gonna print go. And then so we're gonna tell the player to go, like play the game. And then we're gonna start the coin timer and we're gonna unpause the player movement. Quite a lot, I know. But we're not done yet because we have this code down here. And this code, func on coin timer timeout, is gonna be whatever. This is gonna be the function that's called whenever this coin timer ends. And whenever that coin timer ends, is essentially whenever the player runs out of time. And so we'll tell the player, you lost. Press space to play again. And then we're gonna pause the player and we're gonna set game start equal to false. All right. So if you copy the code, it's a good idea to copy the entire script just to make sure you didn't miss anything. Yeah. Once we have this, there is just one more scripting thing we gotta change. We have to change the player script. So let's go to the player script, player.gd. We are going to go to the top, scroll to the top. You're gonna create a new variable, var paused, and it's gonna equal to false. So it's gonna be a new variable that's gonna track whenever the game is paused. And as I talked about before, this is being changed by the main script. So we're essentially doing like cross script coding. So this main script is accessing the property of the player script, which is paused. And then inside the physics process function, we're going to check if the game is, if the player should be paused. if this is true, if pause is true, we are going to return. And what return does is essentially it cuts this function short. It says, stop this function. I'm not gonna execute the rest of this code. So return is just gonna stop all this code. So return will essentially stop the function in its tracks. It's gonna say, stop whatever you're doing and don't run the rest of this code. So essentially, if it's paused, it's gonna not run this movement code and the player won't move. All right. Cool. So now that we have that, we have to change a few more things and then our game will be playable. So let's do that. So let's go to click on 2D really quick. Let's go to our coin timer. Let's go to node signals. And then we're gonna go to this timeout signal. Make sure you're on the right timer. You want to be on the coin timer. We're gonna go to signals and we're gonna go to timeout. So click on that, right click, and then click connect. And we are going to make sure we are connecting it to the main scripts, not the player. We're gonna connect to main. And if you copy the code from the document, this should connect pretty well. It'll connect right to the function that we copied over. And we don't need to do anything else for that. It's also important to check, so go to Control S to save your scripts. Go to back to main, go to the inspector, and you'll see that you have two new properties, two new variables you can change. And these are how much, this is the coin time, and that's the start time, right? So the coin time is how much time the player gets every time it touches a coin. And the start time is how much time the player starts with. So let's try this out. So we can start the game. Oh, I already lost. What's the issue there? Oh, okay. So I'm gonna make this start time a little bigger so I can because I'm kind of rusty at this game. I'm gonna make this 2 seconds just to make it a little easier on myself. But yeah, this game is working. You'll see in the output window like telling you like the status, telling you different things of the game. And you'll see that whenever whenever we touch a coin, it's gonna tell us how much time is left. So that was something that actually I didn't explain this code. But whenever this coin collided function is called, we are printing the time left, the current coin time left, and we're also increasing that time. Yeah. So there's also this code that we added to make sure that we're, yeah, okay. Your inspector says some parts won't save. I'm not sure why that would be the case unless is there an error in here in your script? If there's no errors in your scripts and you can access these script variables, if it's giving you a warning or anything like that, you don't need to worry about it. If your game is working right now, it should be good. Doesn't work. Yeah. All right, we have one last thing to add to our game before this class is over. So we'll do that. And then I can help you out, Newton and Hudson. Because we're practically done. So let's click on 2D here. Let's go back to the scene. And we're gonna add a background to our game because I'm kind of sick of the gray. It's kind of a lame background, I won't lie. So let's go on the main node. Let's add a new sprite. And we're gonna give it our background sprite.png texture. And I'm also gonna position this so that it covers our entire screen. Just like that. And also I forgot to you want to make sure that you go to import for your background sprite.png, because you will notice that it's a little blurry right now, and I don't want this to be blurry. It's that's not ideal, right? So go to your background sprite.png, go to the import tab right here. And then we are going to go under filter. And we're going to uncheck this. And then we're going to click re-import. So let's do that. Uncheck filter, click re-import, and you'll see that our background is a lot more clean. And you'll notice that once we've done this, our player is hidden behind the background, and that's not what we want. So we're gonna go and change one small property. You're gonna go to Node 2D, the Node 2D tab, and you're gonna go to Z index category. And you're gonna change the Z index from 0 to -1. And essentially what Z index is and what it controls is kind of like the layering of different 2D like sprites and images on each other. So making this -1 means that it's gonna spawn or it's gonna appear behind anything that's above -1. So like our player is on Z index 0, just like our coins. So both of them will appear above the background. Let's try it out, and you'll see that we can play the game like usual, and we now have a background that isn't just plain gray. All right. Yeah, so it's not 2D, because of the Z. Well, it is still 2D. It's just that different things are layered on top of each other. All right, Skylar, make sure you set the Z index to -1 here. So on your sprite, go to Z index and set that to -1. I'm gonna name this the background as well, so I know that it's the background. So go to your background sprite and go to Z index. All right, so that's all the code we have for today. And besides explaining some of the code a bit more, there isn't really much to do. Like there's some of the stuff in the win and the losing. You can adjust, obviously, you can adjust the player's move speed. Make this like 20, 10. You want to make them move really slowly. Or you can change the start timer. You can change the start time, the coin time, all these different variables to change like the feel and difficulty of your game. But I'm gonna help out. Let me help out. So who needs help? I know Newton needs help. Yours doesn't work. So what was your first issue? Yes, you can go if you want. Yeah, we're pretty much finished. Bye. Thank you for being here. Okay. I am also gonna stop the recording then because we're finished.